Good evening, everybody. It's Tess Crawley here, clinical and forensic psychologist and director of Dr. Tess Crawley and Associate Psychology in Hobart and Launceston. Touching base with you this evening after just settling off my little people a little while ago. And while I was in with them waiting for them to nod off to sleep, it got me thinking about family traditions. Before I put the kids to bed, I found it was... Oh, good evening, Amanda's with me. Hi, Amanda. Before I got these little people of mine off to sleep tonight, we were sitting up and watching some Doctor Who episodes, and I just happened to notice that it was 7 o'clock and I was watching Doctor Who on a Sunday night, and all of a sudden I was transported back in time to my own childhood of watching Doctor Who and Countdown on a Sunday night, and that being a really firm part of my early childhood. And it got me thinking about how important traditions are in the growing up time of a child. And when you become an adult and you look back fondly on some of those traditions, they're the things that we remember most, I think, about childhood. And they give us a sense of security and a sense of place. My children and I, we have this lovely Friday night thing where we get pizza. In fact, they really like the cheap and crappy cardboard frozen pizzas, and that's what they like, but that's our tradition, Friday night pizza night. And when I was growing up, Friday nights at my nana's house were Kentucky Fried nights. Well, of course, these days it's KFC. So there's a lot of mirroring in my parenting of my children. In the traditions that I grew up with, we love to have a roast whenever we can pull one off. Things like that really hark back to my own growing up years. And bedtime for us, the bedtime routine has become, since they were babies, has become quite well established. There's a lot of talk in parenting and sleep and settling with babies around the importance of routine, in particular a sleep routine. And when I'm talking with adults about sleep, I also talk to them about the importance of a sleep routine, because the routine sets the brain up to know what's coming, and it helps release, all those little brain juices that are so important for the establishment of sleep. So since my kids were very, very little, we've had the routine of sleeping, bedtime stories, bedtime reading. When they were tiny weeny, I used to whisper read to them. So I would read to them, and as they were drifting off slowly, I would keep reading, but in a whispered voice, so that they would still hear me there, and they would still hear that I was still reading to them, but they would gradually drift off to sleep to the sound of me reading. And as they've grown older, they've actually grown quite accustomed to me being in the room with them until they fall asleep, which I personally don't mind, because I know that they won't want that forever, and it's no great big ask out of my life to sit with them till they're asleep. One of our bedtime favourites, at the moment we're going through a really solid Harry Potter phase, but prior to that, one of our big bedtime favourites, and I know this book almost off by heart, and it is, and I will show you. I'll have to, it's going to be back to front, sorry, because I can't get my act together to flip the camera for you in the middle of talking, but Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie, the original Peter Pan. Now, Peter Pan, if you've not actually read the book, it's one of those books that you really must read. It is a beautiful piece of children's literature, and I'll put it in the category of children's literature because it is so beautifully written, and there are concepts that flow through this book that really sit with you. And so one of the things that I really love about the reading time that I spend with my children is that as they grow older, just as Countdown and Doctor Who on a Sunday night or KFC on a Friday night were big family traditions of mine growing up, I think for my children, as they get older, they'll remember the reading, and they'll remember that bedtime was a really pleasant time. Amanda's saying sleep time routines equals bedtime stories. Yeah, such a warm and loving time together with our children. Well, they're young. That's so true, Amanda, because of course they do grow up. They don't stay little forever, unlike Peter Pan. I'm going to share with you a little snippet from Peter Pan. I'm not going to make a habit of reading you bedtime stories, but I thought while we're on the topic, I'll share this lovely little bit. The very first time I read this, There are a couple of things in Peter Pan that I read. Hey Frank, we're talking Peter Pan. Thanks for joining us. There are a couple of little concepts, parenting concepts in Peter Pan. I don't know if they're parenting concepts per se, but they struck me when I was a new parent and was reading this book to my children when they were very, very small. And one element that leapt out at me was Mrs. Darling, of course, the mother of Wendy, John and Michael. It talks early on in the book about when she was fantasizing about becoming a mother. And of course, my work, the clinical work that I do, is increasingly with new parents and also those aspiring to be parents. And there's this lovely description in the book of Mrs. Darling getting distracted from her work because she's drawing little pictures of babies, and she calls them her guesses. These were her guesses because they were the babies that she might have. But there's this little part that I'll read to you, which is absolutely beautiful, about how our children's minds are shaped, I guess, by our parents, by their parents, by us. You know what I'm trying to say anyway. So Mrs. Darling first heard of Peter when she was tidying up her children's minds. It's the nightly custom of every good mother, after her children are asleep, to rummage around in their minds and put things straight for the next morning, repacking into their proper places the many articles that have wandered during the day. If you could keep awake, but of course you can't, you would see your own mother doing this and you would find it very interesting to watch her. It is quite like tidying up drawers. You would see her on her knees, I expect, lingering humorously over some of your contents, wondering where on earth you'd picked this thing up, making discoveries sweet and not so sweet, pressing this to her cheek as if it were as nice as a kitten, and hurriedly stowing that out of sight. When you wake in the morning, the naughtinesses and evil passions with which you went to bed have been folded up small and placed at the bottom of your mind. And on the top, beautifully aired, are spread out your prettier thoughts, ready for you to put on. So, bedtime routines, loving family traditions, lovely words in beautiful children's literature, all these things add up to the essence of childhood and the essence of growing up. And I think as parents, when we have the opportunity to create traditions like this and to instill a love of reading and a love of stories and a love of good storytelling into our kids, I think it's such a precious thing to be able to do. So I feel very privileged to be able to spend my evenings tucked away in the dark with my children, reading to them by the torchlight of my phone, and then sitting with them until they're fallen asleep, just like Mrs. Darling does in the books. So she sits in the nursery. She sits at the other end of the room by the fire in her rocking chair, mending socks while the children fall asleep. And she herself nods off one night, and that's when the children escape with Peter Pan. Or actually, no, that's not that night, but it's another story. Have a lovely Sunday night, whatever you're doing tonight. I hope you've got a lovely Sunday evening tradition of your own. And today is, of course, day 30 of my 90-day vlog challenge, so we're a third of the way through. Amanda's sending me lots of loves. Thank you very much, Amanda. So we're a third of the way through the vlog challenge, and I must say I'm really enjoying touching base with you all on a daily basis and getting your feedback and finding out what's of interest and finding out what topics you're keen to hear more about. So please do feel free to let me know more about the sorts of things you'd like me to talk about in future videos. But today was just a little indulgence for you all on a Sunday evening before we all toddle off to bed. Have a fabulous week ahead. Don't forget, you can get in touch with my practice if you're interested in working with any of my clinicians through our website, tesscrawley.com.au. We have a contact page there. But otherwise, do feel free to share these posts and give me some likes or loves if that's what you'd like to do, or indeed ask me any questions or send some comments through. I will talk to you all again tomorrow on day 31. Have a fabulous night. Take care. Bye-bye.